Welcome to Rapping with Rosemary. I'm your host, Rosemary Lanier, and it's good to be back in the studio at Concord TV, because I think in 2024 I actually did not do even one little show after having done this for about 30 years, I guess. And I have been trailing off, but that was too few last year. So this year I'm going to start up again with an occasional show and talk about different issues that are facing us. And I'm also getting involved as producing a new show. And my guest today is Jesse Gillis, who is going to be hosting that show. And Now is the Time to Talk is the name of it. And Jesse was a member of the Air National Guard for a number of years. And I think that's really will bring some interesting perspective to some of the things you wind up discussing, and because so many of us, I think, we're not connected to any military force, whereas when I was your age or a little younger, I think most families had a member that was in the service or something, and I don't think it operates that day, and we forget about what's going on in that part of our society. And you have, well, we'll talk a little bit more in a few minutes about some of the issues you want to discuss and bring up. And so welcome, anyway. Beginning, hopefully, of a good, good cooperative relationship here. This, of course, is being taped on January 23rd, so we're just a few days into the second Trump administration. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding that a lot of people I know are really down in the dumps and wondering what's going to happen. And I think one of the things to combat that feeling, in a sense, is to discuss things, point out errors and lies, plain old lies that come out of the administration quite frequently. And so I hope to have a variety of people on throughout the year that would discuss that. One thing that has happened is people that were involved in the January 6th attack on the Capitol have been pardoned by the president. And I came across a couple articles where actually two people, and maybe there's more, but I don't know, refused to take the pardon because they took responsibility for their actions. Both served a few weeks, I think, or maybe a few months in jail. One is a woman in Idaho, and one is a gentleman in New Hampshire. And in Idaho, the woman said, Pamela Hemphill in Idaho, and she did spend, like I say, a few months, 60 days actually, in jail in May of 2022. So she served her time, as probably many of them, I would assume, did, because the initial time given were limited. But she says she did it, she takes responsibility, and she served her time, and that's it. She doesn't need the pardon. And Jason Riddle was kind of interesting. He spent 90 days in prison and guilty of theft of government property. He stole some kind of book out of somebody's office, okay, I guess, and illegally protesting inside the Capitol. And he was, at the time, this is a kind of interesting, at the time he was struggling with alcoholism. And part of his sentence was to get treatment for that. So now he's been sober for a while. Okay. And he lives a much better life, than he was living at that time. But he's also taking responsibility for his actions. I don't know how you feel about all the pardons. I think some are a little frightening. Go ahead.
No, some were. I don't know the details of most of the cases. Mm-hmm. For each individual tried for the actions that they did, based on, I assume, mostly video footage, if not any audio. So some people, it was federal trespassing. You're breaking the law by entering here. But I don't know any particular cases, and other people should be held accountable for what they were doing, mm-hmm, which I considered more violent crimes. Mm-hmm.
And I think don't know if you've seen some of the Capitol Police on various news shows lately. That they were very upset by it. Some of their friends died because of that, if not immediately on that day, but as a result of the attacks. And plus, I think there's like a mental stress that never did they think this would be happening.
Yeah. And
how that disturbs you. And I know a lot are upset by the pardons, and as well they should be, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, so we'll go back and forth of things I have to say, and let's say, what are you interested in? What do you plan on discussing and looking at on your show?
All it regards activism, anti-war, veterans for peace. These are subjects. I mean, it's a broad range of what our U.S. foreign policy has been doing and what our nation asks us to do, and where are we today after what we've been doing for the past 25 years now. Mm-hmm. We're still doing combat operations overseas under authorizations of use of force from 2000 to go after the perpetrators of 9/11, and that's used in over 22 countries. I just wrote a thing for the Veterans Committee for the state legislature. Tomorrow they'll be voting on the Defend the Guard bill that just went up. So that's been occupying my time recently, mm-hmm. Listening to the public testimony, going back to see how other states are handling this. But the idea is that the federal government should actually declare war against a nation in order to send National Guard troops to a war zone. And they haven't been doing that. So that's been a thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have the idea the National Guard is for here,
yeah.
in this country, in case there were to be attack in the country, but also they help out in crisis situations,
yeah.
at time and that kind of thing, and probably not aware that they're being sent overseas.
They may not, and there is a dual. So you have 2 oaths. To the federal government, to your commander-in-chief. Now it's President Trump. What was Joseph mm-hmm. Biden? And there was, but you also have a state mission under the governor for state emergency response. So this is just this bill, which isn't for the opponents against it. They say it's going to defund the Guard because it's mostly federal assets and federal money that gives those people a job during the weekends and whenever they're activated. But to declare war because people will risk their lives and limb and destroy families to go somewhere that we didn't have an official declaration of war. If we're at war and it looks like war, it should be declared war, but mm-hmm. we feel like the federal legislature hasn't been doing their job. They've given up their responsibility unconstitutionally to the president to not only be the commander-in-chief, but to declare we're going to war.
And at the federal level, I would assume if it's a general, we're going to war, they can pick troops from any state, whereas the rest of it is state by state.
It comes down to the missions of each. So there's only so many for where I was at Pease, because I'm no longer in, but Pease is a refueling wing, and so there's only so many bases that have that mission, that have that equipment. And if that gets called up for, this is where I don't know the internal workings for National Guard Bureau, but you're in rotations to perform a mission, and there's only so many units that can do that. So it depends on what you do.
Okay. And so it sounds like you get involved at the state level. You've
yeah.
been going to hearings, you said, right now?
I just listened to this testimony, but my getting involved more than what's said behind closed doors with people like this is unacceptable. It just recently started. Maybe August was the first. I started to reach out to see who else is paying attention to this and who's actually taking steps to do something, and that's where I found Veterans for Peace, the New Hampshire chapter. Mm-hmm. And then I get in touch with Will Hopkins, who's the current chapter lead, and I find out, oh, there's a lot of veterans who feel this way, that this is unacceptable going on. I mean, mostly starting with the Vietnam vets, but those who feel that Vietnam was a crime, and then all the way up to the present, everything we've been used to do overseas.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for us to know and to hear the feelings and opinions of people who served and or still serving about these situations, because I think most of us, like I say, I don't think we have that much of ownership of what's happening unless we have a family member or a friend in the Guard.
Yeah, and it's one thing. It's like a secluded community because it's mostly the veterans are the only ones that could say things over there. Those who have been there, but because they share typically that trauma from going. I've deployed, but in the Air Force, it's a different. You don't see what you see unless you're Special Forces. You're actually off the base, but everybody in the Air Force is typically on base, supporting the flyers in the sky. So it's a mini city out wherever.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see combat, but what that does with our reckless spending and our foreign policy, because these bills pass so fast to send weapons or money for weapons, but they are so slow on emergencies here in the United States, and anything for the war effort. And it's not for nothing that we had the War Department and changes to the Department of Defense. It's always for defense now. We don't make war. It's like a simple name change. We can't be that because we're the Defense Department. It's such a silly thing.
Actually, historically, if you look at what the United States has done, it's supported and stimulated wars in various countries throughout the world
Constantly.
Over time without really admitting it.
Without admitting it. And that's the thing with the not declaring war. They're not held responsible for the same reason that President Putin of the Russian Federation is guilty of war crimes for invading Ukraine in 22, regardless of how you feel about Russia's situation. It's still a crime of aggression. He still invaded another country. It's the same crime that Bush would be indicted for under the ICC, but we didn't call it a war. It was an MF, and that was our authorization of use of military force, and that was against Iraq. But the legislature never had to declare war officially. They gave that to him, and it's still open. And there's legislature that tries to, at the federal level, to end it. But as Mark Milley, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, had said, is that we have to keep the 2001 AUMF because that's how we do our combat operations. That's how it makes it legal. That's how we legally go into combat zones and deploy troops and do kinetic warfare under an AUMF in countries and against enemies that weren't declared or foreseen. And now it outlives almost everybody who signed that bill into being.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the people's attitudes, I think, too, towards government and the military vary. Some people are, if you say government, oh, I hate government,
Yeah.
But to me, like, as a society needs a government, it's what it's doing.
Yeah.
And its impact on its citizens that's important. It's not that government in itself is sort of neutral. And if it isn't working, or if you think it's not working in a proper manner, then, it's, I think, our responsibility to try to change it, which you're doing here with the declaration of war.
And there's quotes that stick out to me, and one of them was, I think Solomon wrote a book about something about where the money goes for the war industry, but it's like the war system doesn't care what you think about it, but it may care what you do about it. And that's where, like, yeah, you can say all you want. Just like when you're going to watch, if you ironically go watch a bad movie, you still gave them money. You still paid for the ticket. No matter how bad it was, you still supported it. And they can continue putting out those things because it's so bad or whatever the reason is, but you support it with your tax dollars or the price of a ticket. You're supporting the movie. So it matters what your actions are, not what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, different points in time. I know some people withheld their taxes. I never went that far, but I think I'd like to try ways maybe where at least I don't have to give as much taxes because I'm not so sure I like where a lot of it goes. I'll put it that way.
So people take that money that they figure out. I'm just getting into how they've done that, but they've taken that money they think goes towards certain things. So say, what of the defense bill that goes towards Israel, they've taken that money, how much they figured out how much they spent for it, and they give it to a charity and say, that's my donation charity because I refuse to give this much because I think it's something like if I remember correctly, $23, $24. If you didn't agree what was going on in Gaza and you're going to pay your taxes this year, it's like $23 or $24 per person that goes to the state of Israel to conduct what they're doing. And so I think if you donated that, that's what they were doing. Or of any war, if you figure out how much was being spent on it. But Henry Thoreau, I think, Walden Pond, I think he spent some time in jail because he refused to give money to the government for what they were doing.
Could be. Some of my history's rusty.
Yeah, it's
one thing, excuse me, you wrote an opinion piece for a local paper, and you talked about Armistice Day back in November, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of interesting. Can you give me, a little summary, let's say, of what you were saying in essence, what it was when it started and how it changed in the 50s and how that influences the way we look at things?
I don't know why I look back to Armistice Day. I remember the name at some point, a history project, school project, Armistice Day. Why did they change it? Okay, Veterans Day. I was in maybe high school, elementary school, but it was recent. I look back and it's no problem. People support, thank you for your service. Those 5 words. And well, yeah, you thank them. You can thank a veteran for their service, for their sacrifice, and people feel obliged to do that. And Veterans Day, it's all about supporting the veterans because forbid what would happen to our veterans now to what the ones were done in Vietnam. So they were treated so poorly, so we have to support them. But we support them by sending them to these wars, and we don't make a fuss, like, don't send them to wars. There were protests for invading Iraq, for what we were doing. There were protests during the Vietnam War. But the idea that why are we celebrating their service and their sacrifice? We don't question why they're being sent to these wars. So they just go do your thing, and then we'll support you come out. And so looking back at Armistice Day, and it turns out, no, it was Armistice Day. It was the end for peaceful negotiations that wouldn't ever have to go through World War I again. It was considered an absolute failure, depending on who and understanding of I think most of the powers were looking for war to various departments. How many different people in these governments have their own objectives and their own little power grabs, but you look back and it's like, no, these people were calling for peace. They remember what it was to actually be in a wartime. And even in the United States, where we were so far in both wars removed from the fighting or the actual having to deal with.
Yeah, having your cities bombed.
Having your cities bombed. You just had the rations, but that was bad enough. To call for we should always try to find peace because this is awful. Anybody touring Europe after the First World War, Second World War, I mean, the Second World War was almost everywhere, but it was like there was a call for peace. And today, you see nothing but calling for war. I get to hear regarding Iran, just nonstop calling for war, to eliminate their nuclear bunkers, to do first strikes. And I think it was Lindsey Graham today was talking about diplomacy or diplomatic means has a very small chance, but militarily we can pretty sure take out their nuclear capabilities. And it's not even on the table. And I listened to Chaz Freeman, a diplomat, an ambassador, a long time. He's older now. When he's saying like the diplomatic service, the foreign service, their budget has dwindled. Like the diplomacy isn't quite there. It's about making war. So we send, on a slightly tangent, it's for Ukraine, we think, we want peace. So we send war, we send weapons to find peace. I don't understand. It's just constant. We need to support our friends, so we give them weapons to fight to every last Ukrainian. It's like, it's war. It's like what we know is just more war. Can't talk with them, just go to war with them.
Of course, I've always struggled with that kind of thing going on because if somebody is invading you with weapons, you have to defend yourself in some way.
Yeah.
But if it stops there, and you're not trying to find ways to, I guess, end the conflict and seek peace, then it doesn't make too much sense in the long run.
Right.
Even in the shorter run. But it's a difficult situation.
Yeah.
As to where you draw the lines. If you can give me the enlightenment.
For Russia and Ukraine?
Yeah.
Oh, negotiate, I do not feel that the heads that are in these negotiations are really trying to find peace in this. That opportunity, it was within the first 2 months of the invasion, there was a settlement. I think it was in Istanbul where the Ukrainian heads and the Russian heads came together, and they actually had made significant promise on a peace deal. And when that was found out by Victoria Nelson and our State Department, I believe she sent over Boris Johnson, who was Prime Minister of England, the UK then, to squander it and say, Zelensky, we'll give you everything. You don't have to settle for peace. And this was early on. This was for the war. And the whole thing is, well, I do think there are merchants of death who are constantly selling arms, and this is a weapons deal. This has been lucrative for our arms manufacturing.
That's one element that really disturbs me when they say we're putting all this money into the Ukraine-Russian war. That but most of the money stays here and supports our businesses.
It supports
Something's wrong here.
Yeah, because that money, they say we're giving this much, but in those bills, they have to be spent on arms manufacturers here. They're all come back here. So it's like, so first it's support them for their democracy. The Ukraine's the bastion of democracy. That was not the case before the invasion began. That was not, Ukraine was not a place that was a beacon in Eastern Europe. And all of a sudden now it's the democracy. But then it changes. So it's no longer we're supporting democracy. We don't want Russia to get access to those minerals, the trillions of dollars worth of minerals in Ukraine. And then it's this is the best deal because we won't lose a single soldier fighting Russia. The Ukrainians will fight to the last man and will weaken Russia's military capability. The narrative has totally shifted. And it's like, to peace to what end? No, because it's the next, we just happened to get out of Afghanistan and now this is the next arms thing going on. And it's quite lucrative, and they're just going to keep setting it off. And the fact that Blinken on his last time in Kiev, had said that they were Zelensky considered lowering the age for conscription down to 18. Send every last Ukrainian to the front line. And the estimates are all over the place, but I'm pretty confident in saying over 400,000 are lost. And they can't beat Russia, but without us funneling weapons to them, as we have been since 2014, they couldn't do this. The war, in one sense, the war started in 2014 with the Color Revolution, with ousting the Russian-favored president, and we've been funneling weapons, and they were fighting a civil war. There's been something like 14,000 deaths between 2014 and 2022. There was already fighting going on. And then there was an official, but the entire time we were funneling weapons in. And some of them openly talking about, we got to funnel in so many weapons to the Ukrainians. So they're not a member of NATO, but they're de facto because all their military supplies, we've been giving them everything. And so it's the next war thing. We'll find another country to have a proxy war. Maybe we'll do it Taiwan against China. We'll just funnel weapons and Taiwanese can lose their lives for more arms deals to make more money. It really doesn't, they have, I don't know what you call these people, besides war profiteers and sociopaths.
Good.
Yeah.
That's probably good, some good descriptions. Yeah, it's, one thing that amazes me historically is that, I'm a little rusty on some of my history, let's say.
No,
but I know after World War I, for instance, that Germany and Italy were treated poorly, and which stimulated World War II in part,
Yeah.
And then since then, I mean, Russia and the United States was on the same side in World War II, and we were fighting against Germany and Italy, but I don't know all the things that went on afterwards, but in treating the relationships better, at least with the Germans and the Italians, which actually my ancestors come from both countries, that, we're partners today in a lot of things.
Yeah.
But Russia, I don't know exactly what happened with Russia, and I haven't done much research lately, but how that turned would be interesting to get more knowledge, I think. If people had more knowledge and sought it out, maybe we'd come up with different ways to approach things.
Maybe we get handed, in our textbooks we get handed, you have to go out of your way to find these things, and you have to go out of your way because it's the corporate media who gives you what's going on. So, for example, before 22, the Ukrainians had a real issue. They had a real issue with their far right, and you find that on YouTube with the old CNN clips. You'd find it on their articles. They've got a far right problem, and that goes back to Ukraine's role in World War II, what the fighting was going on there, because you take Ukraine, the eastern side is ethnically Russian. They speak almost entirely Russian. And as it goes west, you have Ukrainian. So there's more European favor or desire for European stuff for the EU, because they were trying to get in the EU. And you go to the east, and it's more Russian. They're more Russian. And so you have a country that is split ethnically. And so you hear all the stuff that's been going on as far as the banning of the Russian language. You hear... there's no more news stations. It's now just the state news for Ukraine, and I'm not sure Zelensky's actually the legitimate president right now. I'm pretty sure he's past his time. There were supposed to be re-elections, but he held off. There has been no election.
No, in
because
some ways, what's happening, I can see that in a way. What disturbs me about a lot that goes on these days is that I'm concerned about our educational system, because I think there's attacks on our educational system.
Yeah.
And I think one of the good things that the USA did was to support the idea of public education. Now, it's been unequal in a lot of places. You know, a lot of people were left out, but the concept there, that's what you should be using as a community, supporting education system, is being ripped apart, really. And for instance, in New Hampshire with the voucher program, more and more people are going to use vouchers for non-public schools. And not only that, but what really disturbs me, there's no oversight or evaluation of what's happening to the students that are getting the vouchers.
Okay.
And they could be, sitting home doing nothing, or who knows what they're doing. We don't. Excuse me. And it seems to me I just read something from Governor Ayotte about people should have choice in educating their children, which seems to me to say she's probably going to support more vouchers, keep on raising the amount of money a family earns that would be eligible to get the vouchers. And that deeply concerns me on two levels. First of all, if there's something wrong with public education, if it's not meeting everybody's needs, let's invest in it so it meets people's needs, everybody's needs.
Yeah.
And then there's some, amount of accountability too in the public system, rather than just dishing out money and you don't even track, well, I suppose you track where it goes, but you don't know what's happening for those students. And some are homeschooled, some are in religious schools, some are in private schools, and it's really kind of concerning. And people, I don't know how many people really try to stay on top of stuff like that. So it's hard to get those messages out there. Like, be aware and think about things, do a little research. It doesn't even have to be deep research.
Yeah.
But I really believe in trying to educate oneself, on issues. And there are various organizations that can help you, like your Veterans for Peace, you were talking about, and on more local issues too, like the Kent Street Coalition in Concord and American Friends Service Committee. There's a lot of groups out there that support people and support a better community for all, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And it would be good if people, I know you got your work, you got your family, it's hard to keep up on a lot of these things, but I think people need to make that effort more.
It's hard to, and I feel like when you feel personally connected to, like it's affecting you, then people step up and they I won't stand for it. I imagine It goes for any of these issues that when it affects your community, then you pay attention to what's going on at large, like how this is affecting other communities, and all of a sudden you find you're motivated because it affected you, and you want to make sure it doesn't happen to others, or you want it to just stop having it's continuing. The same thing, what happened in East Palestine, Ohio, after the train derailment and the blowing up of those cars. It brought up all these things that the Norfolk, Virginia, I forget the corporation that owns it, were cutting corners on the classification system and the brake pads, and who ordered it to blow up these things, and the people are still dealing with that today, and that they're just left, in Ohio, they're just left there to deal with the aftermath and cover it up because they don't want to make an administration look bad. Well, in any part of whether it's Pete Buttigieg's transportation secretary, all the way up to the top, because how are they handling the disaster? I can't remember what else was happening at the time. I think we were already supporting Ukraine, but you didn't hear much for emergency response towards East Palestine. And that's just one example the flooding that happened down south not too long ago in North Carolina. The people now, FEMA's run out of money, or that the people who had temporary housing, it's now gone, and they have to find other ways to live. But they have either the community's been destroyed, or their job's gone, or the house is gone, and I don't know what the situation is down there.
And I think a lot of things hit the news for a while and then it disappears, so we don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Unless there's some connection, like when they had the, what was it, floods, hurricanes, or whatever it was, down in Louisiana, maybe?
Yeah.
Anyway, years ago. And, a lot of people, my husband went down there for a while and helped rebuild and that kind of thing. And so for a long time, there was a lot of attention on it, but what is it like today? I don't know. Maybe there should be follow-ups.
Yeah.
And also learning from how to help people. What are the needs?
Somebody, I had heard, somebody just came out with a book, I haven't read it, about the Flint, Michigan water crisis that's still ongoing.
Yeah, that's been quite a few years.
It's been a very long time. That goes back to Obama. It gets into the corruption among the government, what they were allowing to get away with for water filtration, and it's I haven't read it. Who is mishandling this, and how is it not? Where's the accountability for these people? And they still don't have good cleaning drinking water, this many years later. Maybe it's like put in a war on Flint, and maybe all of a sudden money would be poured in to rebuild the piping and infrastructure.
Oh, we don't have to go to that extent.
But the money moves so fast for our foreign policy, as opposed to at home, what affects our communities here. And they say that's the issue out there. That's the thing we should be scared about.
Well, I don't know that we're encouraging too many people in the way they might be feeling these days, but I think it's good to want to look at the problems that are there and keep track of them and try to, like I say, do better. And pressure on government to do better, because we're really, to me, one of the quote weapons we have, I don't really like to use that word, but our strength, let's say, is our vote, for instance.
Yeah.
And this past presidential election, like 87 million people, I think, that were eligible to vote didn't.
Okay.
And I think there were 70-some million for Trump, 70-some million for Harris. And it's like, that is something that you have, where you can, it might seem one vote out of 200 million or something, but it is some power you have. And if you go with other people, and you unite and you find people that care, and with similar values that you have, you can be a strength and a force. I don't know how you break through that, especially these days, where people are just so turned off about all the things that go on, they don't want to participate anymore.
There's a feeling of a lack of power. There's a feeling of isolation and who to trust, and but the ability to, because it is hard work to go out and organize and get people to believe that you say doing the work, you're trying to get people. There's the education and the advocacy aspect, but going out and voting, and you're feeling apathetic because your vote doesn't matter. It goes to one of these two people, and one cares less about us than the other, and you feel like you're. So often I hear choosing the lesser of two evils, and that's been a phrase for a long time. And I imagine, well, it still gets more evil. It's just less evil. It's just so instead of taking off, but it's still progressively getting worse. And they have the money and the resources and the spotlight in the media, and you have to be the local community that goes out and does the hard work to try and convince your fellow citizens and residents that maybe voting for one or both. I feel so. One thing, if I tell people I voted for somebody else who wasn't, or I wrote in somebody, I'm told it's a wasted vote. And I think, well, I'm not going to put my name to either of these people. I don't see how they benefited any of us based on the policy decisions they made or what they speak to.
We could have a discussion about that, but
yeah.
not right now, because
Okay.
I think we're probably running short on time, aren't we? Yeah, let me just make one. I'd just like to reference one person. This week, an Episcopal Bishop, Mary Ann Edgar Buddy, spoke at the Washington National Cathedral at the the inaugural meeting there, ceremony and way they have. But I just like the way she approached things. Of course, it rolled off a certain person, but she was saying, in the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people of our country. There are gay, lesbian, transgender children in Democratic, Republican, independent families, some who fear for their lives. And and some of that fear is fairly recent.
Mm-hmm.
From talking to some of my friends, where in the past they didn't feel fearful.
Yeah.
But lately they do feel more fearful, and they've been accosted and that kind of thing. And like, have mercy on people. And she also talked about immigrants. And actually, according to the Public Religion Research Institute, a majority of U.S. Christians support those outlets,
Mm-hmm.
not outlets, those words and feeling. And I just would like to say kudos to Bishop Buddy for being brave enough to stand out and say something.
Yeah.
When she knew that she'd get a lot of flack back, and she has, from President Trump and others. And it takes, I guess, more people to have that courage.
Yeah.
Not attacking people, but for putting forth one's own values. And please, listen. And this is I would agree with her, it's a healthier way to go. But anyway, I want to thank you for coming and talking with me today. And I look forward, my next thing will be helping you and working with you to start a new program. Now is the time to talk.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing, and I look forward to hearing more.
That's the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you eventually again. I'll put it that way. I don't do things on a consistent schedule anymore. Goodbye.
Yeah. Goodbye.